And how do you explain that long-winded flying sequence in Avatar? You know, I think the first one, Avatar, right? Well, I recently watched a masterclass by James Cameron, and he said something about that scene. Is in the end of the day, the art of filmmaking is still art, right? And no matter how much rules and storytelling elements and simplicity and whatever yada 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 you have to adhere to, in the end of the day, you are the artist and you get to make what you want to see, right? You get to make what you want to see. And that long-winded flying scene that he has to fight with the producers to keep because it was too long is because he wants to see that. He wants to see a long flying sequence. Because why? Because it's cool. Because he likes it. The end, right? And turns out many people are like him because, as Stanley Kubrick says once, if you like something, chances are other people like you are gonna like it too. So it's kind of a win-win, right? You get to do what you like, and people who are like you are gonna enjoy it as well. Okay, so in the end of the day, it's artistic. So then, what is cinematic storytelling, right? What makes an image cinematic? Well, I think now, if I'm looking at all of this, to answer you that would be too arrogant. But here's my answer. My partial answer at least. So, what makes an image cinematic depends on your artistic values, artistic taste, and what is the goal that you want to achieve. If you want to do the commercial look like this, like the Batman here by Greg Fraser, like Dune over here, then these rules are really important. You gotta know how to light. You gotta know, how to, if you're working with actors on real films, how to direct your actors, choose your actors. You gotta know production. You gotta have a good production design, meaning concept art and stuff like that. Because in the end of the day, it's a painting too, right? But it's more constrained in a way. Okay. And if you want to do something surreal, then you can do something surreal. You don't have to stick to any of these rules. But I assume you're here to talk about the and that's a long ass explanation, by the way. I assume you're here to talk about this commercial Hollywood look, right? So that's what we are going to talk about next. Now, now that we get that out of the way, let me get into the next part of this video, which is now we're gonna analyze what makes an image cinematic in a way that Hollywood makes it. Okay, and we're gonna start a new scribble. So it's story based still, right? In the end of the day, story is still the king. That's why when James Gunn announced the new DC slate and says that he is gonna focus on the story is really important. I'm excited because yes, that's supposed to be what it is. It's the important is the story. Now, if we see, and this kind of commercial Hollywood look can still bend the rules a little bit too, right? And I'll show you some examples and the context of it. Now, let's talk about the lighting first, okay? Let me find you some frames, some random frames that we can find to show you that this principle is everywhere in Hollywood movies. Now, let me show you Viggo Mortensen here from Captain Fantastic. Okay, and let me click on another frame and show you Brendan Fraser here from The Whale. Okay, now one is a smaller scale movie, one is a bigger scale movie, right? But we can agree that both movies are about just humans. Okay, there's no CGI, there's no, maybe there's CGI, but there's no like flashy special effects of people fighting with superpowers. No, none of that, right? And if we see both, lighting wise, what can you see? Well, I can say that they sculpt with light, but in what way? Well, you can see here, you can analyze. And by the way, lighting, while not while not the most important aspect of what makes an image quote unquote look professionally cinematic, it's, I think, one of the biggest factors. It's not everything, but it's a big thing. So let's analyze this. So we see, based on the specularity of the eyes, that somewhere here there is a warm light, right? Maybe, judging from the temperature, I would say somewhere from 3,500 to 4,500 Kelvin in temperature. That's why it looks warm, right? And but it doesn't end there, right? You will notice that on the side here, there's also another light. There's probably coming from around here, that I think is around, it's definitely more than 6,500 Kelvin. By the way, with light temperatures, the lower it goes, the warmer it looks. The higher it goes, the colder it looks. So, and yeah, so, but why did they put this light here? Well, if you delete this, okay, it's not going to look the same. It's suddenly look more amateurish, but when you keep it back, now suddenly the form is sculpted beautifully, right? And is it realistic? Not really, right? It's not really a realistic light setup. If it's like a realistic window setup, we would probably see a lot of more light here, but it's clearly planned because the DOP, the director of photography, want to sculpt the form as beautifully as possible, right? There's this light from here, and then there's beautiful shadow. Let me choose beautiful shadow, and then he coupled it with a rim light, right? That's really beautiful. And the same with this. This might look like it's pretty neutral daylight lighting, but I promise you, right? I promise you, they probably, because the light is so strong, they probably have some diffuser here, like a white cloth, right? To diffuse some of the light coming to his face from this side. And they probably have another source for this one here, from here. If you go to any daylight photo, your face tend to be either flat or containing really, really harsh shadows that's, not sculpting your face in the most pleasant way as possible. But the fact that Viggo Mortensen looks very handsome here with perfectly sculpted lighting on his face, like here's a light here that's prominent, but there's a little bit hints of a rim light from the side. That's all planned. And if you don't believe me, I implore you to open an Instagram account called Film Lights. Right? This is a very good account that you should visit. Why? Because if you see here, right, this is pretty much a simple diner lighting, but when you see the setup, you'll see that from the outside, there's a diffuser here, right? And then you see here, right? It's diffusing the light from outside that they have the fixture. Oh, it's not diffusing, it's bouncing. Sorry. So they have some light here. They bounce it off this fabric, and then the fabric will bounce it into the interior, making a soft light, right? And that's exactly what happened here. Like, it's all planned, right? Here too, it's all a light setup. It's believable, but it's not realistic. Okay? I think that's one of the biggest reasons why Hollywood movies looks like that. And let's look at another kind of image from that account, okay? What about this Will Smith over here? You might see that it's pretty flat, sure. Not really. They have this here. I think this is to kill some of the light from the top, right? And they have this bounce right here going to the bottom. I think they want to kill some of the shadows. And you see this image. If you're not aware of this image looks like this image, right? you're not going to be aware. That's why when you're shooting like a student film, no matter how hard you try, you cannot put a finger on the pulse on that commercial professional look. Well, here you go. This is the secret, right? And again, let's look at another example from somebody, you know, more professional, like Oppenheimer. Well, maybe not this one. Then let's look at that one frame by Roger Deakins. That his light fixture for Jarhead. Or we can take a look at others. The Jarhead is more over the top, I think. I think we can take a look at more subtle ones to demonstrate this principle in a clearer way, I think. So let's look at another one. Bear with me. Yeah, here. This is a night light, right? Night lighting, but you see the fixture outside. It's clearly faking those lights. It's really beautifully sculpted and manipulated. So when I say that in the beginning, when I say that it's sculpting with light, I have a partial understanding. This is what I mean. Like, what I'm saying is not necessarily false. It's completely true, but I just don't have, the more zoomed out version of it, which is it's in the end all about the story. And again, I'll promise I'll relate what I'm saying here into that, right, about these frames. Okay, now, can we analyze some more? Well, for sure. Let's see John Wick here. I really like how John Wick lights, how John Wick lights the whole movie. But you see John Wick, right? What's really cool about this frame is it's sculpting the image in a way that it's not quite the same as these two, but it's sculpting it, well, it's kind of the same, but it's sculpting it with form, light direction, but also with colors, right? What's the focal point? The focal point is supposed to be Keanu, and Keanu, in this movie, he pretty often moves fast, right? And you see that him is based in red light, but then the background is very purposely green, which is the opposite of red, right? If you see the color wheel, which you will learn in art school, I learned this in art school, red is the opposite of green, right? So that's why our eyes go straight away to Keanu Reeves, because he is red on top of green. It's gonna be contrasty. It's going to be attracting attention. And the lighting is fairly simple. It's just one light from here. So the shadows are pretty harsh and all that, but it's really beautiful because everything else is beautiful. It's clearly planned. They also have another red here to balance out this red here, right? They are painting with light, right? Now, these are the same, right? And the fact that Vigo here receives a lot of rim light from the sun here, too, is to also separate him from the background, right? And this rim light also is not only to sculpt his shape, it's also to separate him from the background, right? And I won't go into the fundamentals of image making because this is not that tutorial, but one of the most important fundamentals of image making is to have clear contrast of your focal point, right? And by separating the character from the background, it achieves that, right? And that's what they're doing here with Keanu and John Wick, right? That's why this is so beautiful. It's clearly planned. And then I think you'll have by now I think you'll have a big, sort of a higher understanding on what makes an image, commercial, like that professional look. I think you'll have more understanding, right? Now, let's talk about the relationship of that to the story. Now, let me point you towards one of my favorite movies of all time here, The Batman, 2022. Now, the Batman